I stumbled across a juicy new update in the Blake Lively saga. You know that at the crux of Blake Lively's lawsuit against Justin Baldoni is workplace hostility, workplace toxicity, sexual harassment, all of these awful things that happened on the set of the movie It Ends With Us. Well, according to a new exclusive from the Daily Mail, it looks like this isn't Blake Lively's first runaround with workplace hostility. However, in this case, she was the one who was being accused. Back in 2014, she decided that, like basically every other celebrity, she also wanted to have a lifestyle brand. And then she handed the reins over to her brother, who was running it out of his New York City studio apartment. Now, all of this was going on in 2014, but apparently, allegedly, the brand did not last long because her brother was a tyrant. He was awful to work for. Allegedly, according to this Daily Mail article, he was doing drugs in the office. He was having affairs with employees. It was so toxic. It was completely unprofessional. And so people went to Blake Lively, the employees, set a meeting with Blake and were like, hey, this is your brand. This is the thing that you've built. It's representing you. And it's so awful we can't even work here anymore. And she dismissed their complaints. She poo-pooed them and said, nope, not a big deal whatsoever. They ended up saying that we're going to sue you. So she settled with them, allegedly, for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And Leslie Sloan, the same PR woman that is embroiled in all of this entire ridiculous lawsuit, was the PR woman who made all of that stay quiet. And of course, because it is Blake Lively and because that was the era of girl boss lean in feminism, when Blake Lively closed that brand, she closed the doors of Preserve, she blamed its failure on sexism, which is just the perfect ending to that story. She came out this week and said that she is dropping 2 of the claims in her original lawsuit. And these are not just minute, small claims. No, she is dropping her claims of emotional distress, which, if you remember, were the basis of her first lawsuit. So she is dropping intentional infliction of emotional distress and negligent infliction of emotional distress. That is what she was alleging that Justin Baldoni and his company did to her. Now, the way that all of this transpired is that obviously Justin Baldoni and his team, Brian Friedman, greatest lawyer in the world, except my lawyer who I love, they asked to see her private medical records, i.e. her therapy notes, to defend these claims, which is totally reasonable. If you are going to allege that somebody emotionally distressed you to the point that you need millions and millions of dollars in damages, the other side is going to want to see, okay, well, how did that actually play out? Did you have to go to therapy? Were you on meds? Were you hospitalized? What happened? Do you have texts showing that you were distressed? What is going on here? Now, Blake Lively, she did not want to hand any of that over. I don't know why, I'm not going to speculate, but she said, actually, I would rather dismiss these claims. I would rather withdraw them than have to hand over my medical records, which objectively is a very, very strange thing to do. I mean, even the writers over at Variety had no other option to point out how weird and unconventional this is. In a recent article, they said that the court will now need to decide whether to compel Lively to turn over the information on her mental health, which she has sought to avoid, or dismiss the 2 claims with or without prejudice. It is standard procedure in cases alleging physical or emotional injury for the defense to access the plaintiff's medical records that would shine a light on the root and scope of alleged distress. What is unusual is for a plaintiff to abandon the claims midstream, given that it is well known heading into such a lawsuit the medical records will be an unpleasant but inevitable part of the discovery process. Yeah, unusual, unconventional is putting it mildly, guys. So again, to reiterate, Baldoni and his lawyers obviously wanted these records released. They were going to be released in discovery. Blake Lively said, no, never mind. Actually, we're just going to withdraw them. That, sent up alarm signals on Justin Baldoni's team. They're like, no, actually, we're going to compel you to release them. On Monday, both sides came together. They met with the judge. Both sides kind of duked it out. And the judge had to make a decision. And guys, it is the most savage decision I have ever heard. And he said that no, Blake Lively will not be compelled to release these records because he is now forcing her to withdraw them. But the kicker is that with saying this, he also said that because you already put withdrawing them on the table, you actually have to do this, and you will not be allowed to bring up any claims of any emotional distress in the rest of the case as evidence for any of the other claims. Nothing. Because you're playing these games, because you said, okay, never mind, we'll just withdraw them, you can't touch that. Whatever she's suing him for that he did to her, it cannot be connected to emotional distress because you would rather withdraw that than prove that you were emotionally distressed. So that was a huge win for Justin Baldoni. Also, her dragon, her bestie Taylor Swift, lips sealed. She is not coming to her defense. And so Blake, needless to say, has been flailing. So she has turned to her last support system. She has turned to what remains of the Me Too movement. She has turned to none other than the nonprofits, who very quickly rallied and got into line and got involved in the lawsuit. This recent headline reads, Blake Lively slams Justin Baldoni for abandoning his message of listening to women. Guys, we are right back to 2017 Me Too era. So in a statement given to Us Weekly, Blake's team, her legal team, said, quote, 19 leading survivors and organizations devoted to women's rights, children's rights, and domestic violence have now signed on to 4 separate amicus briefs. And an amicus brief is a letter that is sent to the court on behalf of somebody that is in a lawsuit. They are not involved in the lawsuit, but they are saying, we have a vested interest in this and we want you to hear our expert opinion. So all of these organizations, they are now backing Blake. They signed on to these 4 briefs to say, Justin Baldoni is the worst. We are the experts on domestic violence and Me Too and survivors, and we're backing Blake Lively. So that is what is happening here. All of them are united in opposing Justin Baldoni's attempt to dismantle a law designed to protect women who speak up simply to protect himself. Rather than defend his case on the facts, Baldoni is now contradicting years of his own public persona, and this is where it really gets nefarious. Abandoning the message of his Me Too YouTubes, podcasts, TED Talks, and interviews, where he once upon a time urged men to listen to the women in your life, to hold their anguish and actually believe them, even if what they are saying is against you. These women and organizations are sounding the alarm about his DARVO tactics, which if you don't know is deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. And this is a common acronym used to describe a pattern of abusive behavior. And so that is what they are saying Justin Baldoni is doing here. Not that he is defending himself against defamation and baseless attacks and everything that is going on in the media, but that he is actually pointing it back on her because that is what abusers do. The irony of this is that this is the exact reason why the Me Too movement lost any credibility in the first place. Because of this idea that you have to believe all women. Like, unfortunately, in real time, that is what Baldoni is learning. He is learning that everything that he promoted falls flat when the allegations are possibly false. And Blake and her team, they are happily throwing that in his face to make him look like he is some kind of villain instead of being the victim here. Being a guy who was just genuinely, I think, trying to stand up for women and do the right thing because that is what was being told to him at the time. Like, that is what you need to do. And they're saying that this was some kind of sinister move when I, and most people online, believe that no, this is just him facing the consequences of this entirely blown out of proportion, honestly sinister movement that turned women against men and made men the villain in every single situation. And really, Blake Lively and her team should have stopped there. But no, because in the midst of all of this happening this week, somebody on her team had the bright idea to, let's just start releasing new hair care products for your hairline. Let's do some collaborations with influencers. That is really gonna change everything. And unfortunately, it didn't, because again, the court of public opinion has made up their minds about Blake Lively. So on Thursday, the way that this all went down, there's an influencer, she's based in New York, she's a twin sister, she's known for her hair, her name is Danielle Flong. She posted a video of Blake doing her hair, which is something that Blake does for her hair care line. She's always at these events, she comes and she basically just tousles your hair like Blake Lively's hair, it's always insane like this, and this is what her products are supposed to give you. And so she goes to all of these influencer events and she just sprays them and she just goes like this. That is what happened on Thursday with Danielle, and almost immediately the internet lit up. Number one, because her hair looked terrible and it looked like she had just gotten out of bed, but secondly, because they couldn't believe that Danielle was working with Blake Lively. And yes, that video, that collaboration with Danielle ended up being deleted, probably because of comments like this. One person said, let's be on the right side of history, girls, please. And somebody else said, this is my favorite, Blake is looking for new friends after Taylor kicked her to the curb. So instead, she is paying influencers to make their hair look like a rat's nest. We learned that the judge involved in the Baldoni Lively case dismissed Justin Baldoni's lawsuits. So the first was a $400 million defamation suit against Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds for trying to smear him and ruin his career. And the second was a $250 million lawsuit against the New York Times for conspiring with Blake Lively in December 2024 to basically help her do that, to help her smear him. Now, to be clear, before everyone freaks out like I did when I first read this headline on Monday, this does not mean that Blake Lively won. This has nothing to do with her lawsuit or her allegations. It does not mean that Justin Baldoni is guilty of anything yet. This is purely about his suits, about the defamation lawsuits, and whether Blake Lively and the New York Times can actually be sued. I mean, it is so crazy. And this is because Blake and her team were so strategic with how she filed her complaints before leaking things to the New York Times, so she is protected. Now, the New York Times, ironically enough, covered this, and they said Mr. Baldoni's legal team had not shown that Miss Lively had defamed him, the judge added. because the suit failed to claim that Miss Lively had made any alleged defamatory comments outside of her Civil Rights Department complaint, which are covered by privilege. The judge also ruled that many of the Times statements were also privileged, which means protected, because they had been taken from Miss Lively's legal filing, which are protected. So it's like multiple layers of protection here. He went on to say Mr. Baldoni had not shown that the Times acted with actual malice, the legal standard a public figure like Baldoni must meet to prove libel in publishing the article. Now, I know that there is a lot of legal speak in that blurb, so just to blow this out and give you guys some more context, to defame someone, like Justin Baldoni is alleging that Blake Lively is doing, you must intentionally lie and try to stain someone's image. You must believe that the statements you are making are false. But right now, we still have an open case of Blake Lively against Justin Baldoni that has not been ruled on. It is still open. And because Blake Lively filed her lawsuit and her complaint before going, allegedly, to the New York Times, she is protected. And so essentially, all of that gives her legal cover, and it prevents Baldoni from efficiently fighting back and trying to clear his name. And so basically, the courts have to determine whether she is lying or telling the truth before they can even look at any of these alleged defamation claims coming from Justin Baldoni. And then on top of that, the New York Times has what is called privileges of the press that allows them to keep their sources private, even in court, that sort of thing. So in this circumstance, they also can't be sued. Everybody is protected. This was all so strategic from Blake Lively's team. She got off on a technicality. So again, this is not because Baldoni is lying or because Blake is right. It is because of the groundwork that her legal team laid. And it seems like this was probably always a risk that Justin was taking as he filed in return, but the press that he got from fighting back, from slapping both of them with these insane multi-$100 million suits, I think was worth it. Like, he and his lawyers probably knew that they would get slapped down by this technicality, that they would have to refile or have it be dismissed, file later, whatever it is. But it was so important for him to immediately, in the days prior, to say, I am trying to clear my name, this is not right. That, even though these cases might not go through, was so important. But there is still a real man at the heart of the story, a real family that has been impacted, with families and reputations that are at stake, and he deserved the right to fight back, and I'm glad that he did.